Out of gas, huh? Figures. The mechanic smirked as he leaned on the rusted truck door, eyeing the stranded businessman in polished shoes. Michael Carter stood frozen, embarrassed, staring down the empty road. 2 miles to the nearest station, the mechanic added, "You gonna stand there? Or push with me?" Michael swallowed hard, then set his hands on the hood. And that's when it happened. A push that would change not just his car, but the future of his entire company. What happened next? No one saw it coming. Welcome to Stories by Xavier. Let's uncover what really happened. The pre-dawn air tasted of exhaust and regret as he coasted to a halt on the shoulder. The engine's cough was the final insult in a morning already brimming with tension. Michael Carter sank into the driver's seat, chest tight, hands trembling around the empty gauge. The meeting he'd flown across states to reach, one that could secure the entire company's future, slid farther away, mile by stubborn mile. His heart thumped like a hammer against his ribs. This car wasn't just metal and rubber. It was a symbol of every mile he'd driven chasing profits, every late night he'd spent drafting expansion plans instead of listening to his team. Now, stranded between two nondescript exits on an isolated road, he felt more exposed than ever. The hiss of passing trucks felt like judgment. How had he lost touch so completely? He stepped out, tension cracking in his shoulders, and leaned against the hood. Cool wind bit at his collar, carrying the faint smell of gasoline. His polished shoes felt wrong against the road's rough gravel. He'd traded in sweat for spreadsheets, but the empty tank was proof he couldn't run on autopilot anymore. He closed his eyes and felt the weight of every unanswered email, every frustrated employee, every moment he'd spent behind a desk instead of on the floor. He thought of his diner managers, the line cooks, the dishwashers, people who showed up day after day, even when everything around them wobbled. He wondered if they felt as stranded as he did. A distant rumble hinted at the highway beyond the hill. If help came, it would be from someone whose life he'd never bothered to understand. And that's when the knot in his chest tightened. Every mile he hadn't walked in their shoes was mileage on his own facade. And that's when it snapped. The first vehicle that slowed was a beat-up pickup with rust eating through its fenders. The driver's window rolled down, revealing a face lined by sun and grease. He leaned across the seat, eyes curious but kind. "Need a hand?" he called, voice rough but warm. Michael swallowed, surprise flickering through his chest. He'd expected indifference, maybe contempt, but not this genuine offer. He nodded, managing a tight smile. "Gas station's 2 miles down. Could use some muscle." The man hopped out without hesitation. He wiped his hands on a grimy rag, then clasped Michael's arm in greeting. "Name's Nate. Let's get you moving." His grip was firm, unpretentious, an anchor in the swirl of Michael's guilt and disbelief. As Michael popped the hood and leaned against the fender, Nate positioned himself behind the car, shoulders squared. Together they pushed. The engine's weight pressed back, each footfall a reminder of the vast gap between Michael's polished world and the muddy grit beneath Nate's boots. Gravel bit into their soles, but Nate didn't complain. His breath came steady, measured like someone used a hard work. Sweat beaded at Michael's hairline. He wanted to grip the moment, to remember the texture of the hood under his palm, the sharp scent of oil mingled with the cold morning air. This was real. This was life outside boardrooms and balance sheets. After a few yards, Michael hesitated. "Why help me?" His voice was small, uncertain. Nate glanced back, a faint grin under stubble. "Been there, boss. Flat tank, flat tire, doesn't matter. Out here, we look out for each other." His casual assurance struck a chord in Michael's chest, a silent truth Michael had overlooked. They pushed in rhythm, unspoken solidarity forging between them. With every step, Michael felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in years: connection. The isolation he'd carried began to fracture under the honest weight of shared effort. Somewhere in the distance, the highway loomed closer. But for the first time since the car died, Michael didn't feel lost. He felt part of something real, and that realization sent a shiver down his spine. The road stretched ahead like a silent challenge, gray asphalt disappearing beneath the horizon. Nate dug in, shoulders tight, as he and Michael began the real work. The car jolted forward in shallow bursts, each push a negotiation between effort and momentum. Michael's palms slipped against the cold metal, knuckles whitening with strain. Every breath tasted of effort and reflection. He felt the vibration of the engine frame through his fingertips, the rise and fall of the road beneath his shoes. Sweat dampened his collar, and the morning chill turned each exhale into a cloud of regret. This simple act, pushing a car, was a revelation. He'd grown so accustomed to decisions made from plush offices, backed by reports and projections. Here, there were no shortcuts. After a few minutes, Michael's legs began to tremble. His cardio-trained body recoiled at the unfamiliar burn in his calves. "You okay?" Nate asked, voice steady. Michael forced out a nod, voice rasping. "Just not used to this." Nate glanced back, eyes searching. "Takes a minute. Keep the pace." They settled into a rhythm. 1-2 push, 1-2 push. The world narrowed to the meeting of their shoulders and the asphalt's unyielding grip. Cars flew past in a blur, horns honking indifferently, but Michael barely noticed. Each push was an admission. He'd drifted from the ground level where his people lived. He'd forgotten what it meant to sweat for something tangible. A flicker of anger flashed in Michael's chest. Anger at himself for becoming so distant. He thought of managers who sent emails instead of conversations, cashiers whose opinions he never sought, dishwashers whose cold hands he'd never touched. All of them connected by the hum of this diner empire he'd built, yet separated by miles of corporate polish. Nate slowed, tapping Michael's shoulder. "How you feeling?" Michael inhaled deeply, tasting the grit in his throat. "Aware." The word felt oddly powerful. Nate nodded. "Good start." They pushed on, each step a small victory. And with every yard they gained, Michael felt the invisible walls around him cracking, letting in something he'd been missing: raw, unfiltered humanity. And that discovery burned brighter than any boardroom spotlight could. The incline hit them next, a subtle shift that made the car's weight feel heavier, as if every decision Michael had ever made had been loaded onto this frame. His shoulders shuddered with the effort. Each foot sank slightly into the road's loose gravel, drawing his focus inward, to every choice that had carved his path. The acquisitions that bloated his calendar, the budgets that hollowed his staff's morale, the emails sent at midnight while birthdays went unnoticed. Nate pressed forward without complaint, but Michael's mind raced. He saw the weary faces of managers overlooked, the silent sighs of cooks pressured by unrealistic targets, the tremor in a dishwasher's hands after hours of scrubbing plates. He realized he'd been too busy steering the company to see the cracks forming beneath its surface. A bead of sweat trickled down Michael's temple, stinging as it dripped into his eye. He blinked away the sting and caught Nate's steady gaze in the side mirror. Nate didn't judge. He just pushed. In that wordless solidarity, Michael recognized the gulf between command and compassion. Michael paused, pressing his forehead to the hood. His breath came in jagged bursts. His life had been a series of strategic moves, expansions, partnerships, projections, each one chiseling away at the human connections that once drove him. Now, chest heaving and back protesting, he confronted the gravity of his own ambition. "You ever regret a choice?" Michael's voice was a rasp against the ambient traffic noise. Nate didn't slow his push. "Regret what you can't change?" "No. Learn from it." "Hell yes." His tone was bracing, honest, a mirror Michael hadn't looked into for years. Michael pushed off again, nodding. The car lurched forward, a testament to shared grit overcoming inertia. He felt a fierce resolve fermenting beneath the exhaustion. If he could unearth this raw truth on a roadside, he could carry it back to his offices, his teams, his life. The road still stretched ahead, but the momentum had shifted. He was no longer running from his past. He was pushing toward accountability. And even as his muscles burned, he felt a lightness in his chest, a promise that every ounce of effort now would be a step toward redemption. The sky grayed as clouds gathered, matching Michael's fatigue. His shirt clung to him with sweat and grime. but something inside him was unburdening. They'd crossed the halfway point, and for the first time, he felt momentum, not just in the car's forward roll, but in his own heart. Nate's steady breathing beside him was a rhythm that anchored Michael's swirling thoughts. He watched Nate's boots scuff the asphalt, each step deliberate, uncomplaining. It hit Michael how rare that was, someone giving their all without expecting a medal or email praise. He swallowed, voice strained but urgent. "Why do you keep going, even when it's hard?" Nate glanced over, a wry smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Because nobody else will, sometimes. You push so the next guy doesn't have to." That quiet conviction sank into Michael's bones. He realized how often he'd watched from behind glass walls, letting his people bear the burdens he never paused to share. Every late-night report he signed, every cut he approved, it had been building a weight no spreadsheet could measure. He caught himself, eyes wet with something like awe. "You carry more than this car," he admitted. "You carry everyone who needs you." Nate shrugged. "Just doing my part." Michael drew a breath, tasting the shift. The rest of his life, the boardrooms, the forecasts, felt distant, less urgent. Right here, right now, was where change happened, in shared effort, in raw honesty, in shoulders aligned against resistance. A rumble of engines on the highway signaled they were close. Michael felt his chest tighten. This chapter of revelation was ending, but another was about to begin. He straightened, posture unaccustomed to its own strength. He looked at Nate with a newfound clarity. "Once we get there, I'm not just filling the tank. I'm changing things." Nate nodded, pushing on like the true heavyweight. As the station's neon sign emerged through the haze, Michael realized the real journey had only just begun. And that's when the promise of tomorrow finally felt within reach. Michael eased the car into the station's pump lane, hands trembling as he shut off the engine. The click of the lever echoed the click in his mind. It was time to talk, not just push. As Nate filled the tank, Michael stepped back, shoulders finally uncoiling. He swallowed. "Truth is, I've been running on empty long before this car." His voice cracked, surprise warming his chest at the admission. Nate glanced up, curiosity soft in his eyes. "I thought success was about growth. More locations, bigger numbers," Michael continued, shoulders heavy with confession. "But somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing the people who made it possible." He let the words hang, bitter and liberating. Nate handed him a rag to wipe his hands, then leaned against the hood. "Everybody's got a story," he said quietly. "I grew up 2 blocks from a factory that shut down when I was 16. Dad lost his job. Mom worked 2 shifts. I learned early helping folks out was the only way through." Michael listened, the pattern sharpening. Empathy born from hardship, not from PowerPoints. He thought of his managers scrambling under his deadlines, his cooks battling burnouts he never saw coming. "I've made decisions that hurt people I never knew," he admitted, eyes on the asphalt where their footprints faded. Nate nodded. "Regrets wasted energy unless you use it. You owe it to yourself and them to make things right." His words were simple, but their weight filled Michael's chest. A hiss from the pump snapped him back. The tank clicked full. Michael closed his eyes, breathing in the scent of gasoline and possibility. The world felt sharper, more urgent. "I will," he whispered, voice steady. "I'm going to start by listening." And as Nate capped the pump, Michael knew this shared moment of honesty would echo far beyond these 2 miles. The gas station's fluorescent lights flickered to life as dusk settled, casting long shadows across cracked concrete. Michael and Nate slid into the truck's cab, the air thick with unspoken resolutions. Michael glanced at the dashboard. No charts, no targets, just 2 sets of hands that had moved mountains today. He turned to Nate, voice tentative but determined. "Tomorrow, I'm walking through my own doors as more than an owner. I want to talk to everyone, dishwashers, cooks, hosts, face to face." Nate's nod was the only response Michael needed, the first crack in his fortress of detachment. Back at headquarters, Michael drafted emails. Not memos, but invitations. "Sit down with me. Tell me what you need." He hesitated before hitting send, heart pounding like a war drum. Hit send anyway. His finger hovered before conviction grounded him. Click. The next morning, Michael swapped his suit for faded jeans and a work shirt, boots instead of loafers. As he entered the flagship diner, the hum of breakfast chaos greeted him. Clattering plates, sizzling grills, murmured greetings. He paused at the threshold, inhaling the aroma of coffee and bacon, tasting possibility on his tongue. He approached Carla, a waitress who'd been with the company since its second location. "Can I take 5 minutes of your prep time?" he asked, voice quiet. She blinked, surprised, then led him to a corner away from the line. He pulled out a notepad, pen poised. "What's one thing you'd change here if you could?" he asked, heart hammering. Carla hesitated, then exhaled. She spoke of worn seating booths, broken equipment slowing her down, and a suggestion box nobody read. Michael scribbled furiously, mind flooding with ideas. He moved on to Luis, the line cook, and Marisol at the dish station, each conversation peeling back layers of misunderstanding and mischances. With every story, the walls around Michael's ivory tower crumbled further, replaced by something solid: trust. By noon, Michael's arms were sore from note-taking and handshakes, but his chest felt inexplicably light. Between orders and refills, he discovered what spreadsheets couldn't tell him: that empathy lived in small moments, honest questions, and the courage to listen. And as the lunch rush swirled around him, Michael realized the barriers were gone. He was finally standing among them, shoulder to shoulder, opening the path for real change. Midday heat pressed through the windows, painting everything in a golden haze as Michael stepped outside for a breath. He leaned against the brick wall, arms crossed, watching patrons drift through the front door. The cacophony inside had felt different today, warmer, more alive. He closed his eyes, letting the distant sizzle of the grill and the murmur of laughter settle around him. He thought back to Carla's wistful sigh, Marisol's bright idea for a new work schedule, Luis's plea for better ventilation. Each voice had cut through the corporate static, revealing a rhythm he'd tuned out long ago. It dawned on him. Leadership wasn't about directives. It was about harmonizing every individual note into a meaningful whole. The metallic taste of ambition faded, replaced by something softer: purpose. The realization felt like the first breath of morning, cool and clarifying. He recognized that his success had always been rooted in community, in a labor of countless hands and hearts. Without them, his hires, his profits, his plans, they were hollow. He opened his eyes to the bustling street, workers leaning in to greet him, a nod here, a wave there. He smiled, feeling a warmth that wasn't from the sun. In that moment, he understood the true engine of his business: people. Real people with dreams and struggles, pushing forward, asking only to be seen and heard. And then it clicked. If he could harness this connection, this authenticity, he could transform not just his company, but himself. He felt a quiet surge of determination. This clarity was more potent than any boardroom epiphany. It was forged in sweat and shared struggle. He straightened, squared his shoulders, and stepped back inside. The time for listening had set the course. Now it was time to act. And that's when he knew the next chapter wouldn't be written on paper or in memos. It would be lived out every day, in every conversation, in every small act of respect. He found Nate in the corner of the workshop, tightening a bolt on his stubborn engine mount. The groove in Nate's brow was familiar now, proof of focus, of care. Michael approached slowly, recalling the prize he'd almost missed: the human craftsmanship at every station of his empire. "Mind if I watch?" he asked, voice low. Nate glanced up, surprised, then nodded. Michael settled onto a stool, watching the mechanic's hands move with practiced precision. Each turn of the wrench was purposeful, thoughtful, nothing like the rapid clicks of his keyboard back in the office. "I used to think value was numbers on a sheet," Michael admitted. "But this," he tapped the hood, "this is real." Nate wiped his hands on a rag, meeting Michael's gaze. "Value's what you build with your own two hands. It's the pride in a job done right." Michael felt those words resonate deeper than any shareholder report. He remembered Carla's concerns about chipped paint, Marisol's late-night shift swaps, the dishwasher's meticulous care over each plate. Every act of labor carried an invisible worth he'd never measured. The trust of a team, the loyalty of a community, the dignity in honest work. He stood, walking the length of the workshop, pausing at each station, welders molding metal, apprentices learning the ropes, janitors ensuring tomorrow's work started fresh. He saw resilience in calloused palms, creativity in improvised tools, and unwavering dedication in tired eyes still eager to serve. "I want to invest in this," he said, voice steady. "Not just more branches, but in people. Training, fair pay, equipment, everything it takes for you all to feel that same pride I see here." Nate's expression shifted from guarded to hopeful. "You really mean it?" Michael nodded, chest warm with conviction. "Every bolt, every plate, every customer smile, they're built by real people. That's the value no spreadsheet can capture." As he walked back to the open door, sunlight caught the sweat on Nate's forehead, turning it to gold. Michael understood then that genuine value wasn't in profits alone. It was forged in the hands and hearts of those who made the vision possible. And in that recognition, he found the richest return of all. The neon glow of the gas station sign flickered as Michael and Nate finally rolled into the pump bay. The engine stuttered once, twice, then sighed back to life. Michael stepped around the car, pausing to rest his palm on the cool metal. The 2-mile push was over, but he felt neither triumphant nor relieved. Instead, he stood still, absorbing the gravity of what had transpired. Nate capped the tank and tossed the nozzle aside. "Looks like you're good to go," he said, voice easy. Michael nodded, eyes drifting past the station to the darkening road that led back to his world. "Yeah," he breathed. "Yeah, I am." He looked at Nate, searching for the right words. The mechanic shrugged, as if saying, "You did your part." Michael felt a lump in his throat. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a business card, his real one this time, crisp and unfamiliar against his calloused fingers. "I want you to have this," he said, offering it. "Not for me, but for anyone who ever needs a hand. Call me, if there's ever something I can do." Nate studied the card, hesitated, then slipped it into his pocket. "Thanks," he said simply. Michael exhaled, the weight of generosity mingling with vulnerability. "Thank you," he replied, "for more than just the push." They stood for a moment in companionable silence, two men connected by asphalt and honesty. The station's fluorescent hum felt like applause, punctuating a transformation neither had fully realized until now. Michael climbed into his car, adjusting the mirror to look at Nate standing under the flickering light. He swallowed hard, determination cresting in his chest. This was the end of that road, but the beginning of every road ahead, roads he'd walk, not just oversee. He turned the key, the engines hummed steady beneath him. Before pulling away, he rolled down the window. "I'll see you around, Nate." Nate tipped his head and smiled. "I'll be here." Michael eased onto the highway, headlights cutting through the dusk. For the first time in years, he felt the journey was truly his own. No masks, no autopilot, just a man committed to change. And as the diner lights appeared on the horizon, he knew his real work was only just beginning. The road home unfurled like an unwritten promise, each mile a chance to live what he'd learned. Michael gripped the wheel, sunlight breaking through clouds, haloing the horizon. His diner chain's logo on the dashboard reminded him of the empire awaiting, a world he would no longer rule from afar. He glanced in the rearview mirror, expecting to see Nate's truck receding. Instead, the road behind was empty, reminding him that the real journey now lay ahead, in boardrooms and kitchens, in conversations he'd deferred for years. His phone buzzed. It was his assistant, confirming he'd canceled morning meetings and arranged open-floor hours at every location. Michael smiled. The first concrete step was taken. He flicked the signal, merging onto the highway with renewed purpose. Memories of the push flickered, the gravel biting his soles, the weight of the car an echo of his own burdens, Nate's steady resolve. He realized the last mile wasn't about distance, but about crossing the threshold from intention to action, from being a boss to becoming a leader. He thought of the faces he'd heard from, Carla's suggestion for ergonomic stools, Marisol's call for a mentorship program, Luis's wish for a cleaner exhaust system. Each ask was a bridge to understanding, a plank he would now actively walk across. A sign loomed, Carter's Diner, 5 miles. His pulse quickened. In that moment, he let go of perfection. He didn't need a polished speech or a grand announcement. What mattered was genuine presence. He pulled off the highway at the diner's turnoff, engine sighing in agreement. The gas station's neons were nowhere in sight, but their glow remained in him. He stepped out onto the familiar parking lot, boots crunching on asphalt, and took a deep breath of grease and coffee-scented air. Inside, a chorus of morning greetings met him. Eyes met his with curiosity and hope. He nodded, shoulders relaxed, already thinking of the first question he'd ask. What can we do better today? No fanfare, no script, just the quiet strength of commitment. And that, he knew, would carry him far beyond this last mile. Michael slid into his office chair, the leather cool against his palms. The hum of midday service filtered through the vent, blending with distant laughter and the hiss of coffee steam. His notepad lay open, filled with scribbled observations from the morning. Issues to fix, improvements to make. But today, lists weren't enough. He picked up his phone and stared at the screen. One button press would send a flurry of emails, back-to-back meetings, strategy sessions, investor calls, old routines waiting to reclaim him. He felt the familiar tremor of hesitation. Then he remembered Nate's steady push, the way the mechanic carried more than steel, the solidarity forged in sweat. Michael set the phone down and stood. He strode to the window overlooking the dining floor, watching his team, servers weaving between tables, cooks lining up orders, dishwashers loading racks with deliberate care. Each person moved with purpose, and he felt their pulse as clearly as his own heartbeat. Without another thought, he returned his desk and punched a new email. Canceled. All executive meetings tomorrow. His fingers hovered over the send button, but he didn't hesitate this time. Click. He tapped out another, mandatory on-site visit. Every location this week. No exceptions. Then a third. Open office hours. I want to hear your needs. Each email carried less corporate lingo and more human intent. He didn't frame it as an initiative. He framed it as a promise. Michael exhaled and looked around at the quiet office that had felt like a fortress for years. The stacks of financial reports seemed trivial now. He grabbed his work shirt from the hanger, practical, unpretentious, and shed his dress shirt and tie. He slipped on his boots and felt the familiar weight of responsibility shift into something lighter, accountability. In the hallway, he paused by the employee bulletin board plastered with shift schedules and community flyers. He tore off a clean piece of paper, scribbled, Town Hall, today at 5 p.m. Your voice matters. He pinned it over the stale memo that had advertised the last quarter sales figures. He stepped back, heart pounding with purpose. This sudden decision, sweeter than any victory, was the first act of his new leadership. And as he walked toward the bustling floor, he felt power in its purest form, the power to change. Michael found Nate beneath the hood of a late-model sedan at the workshop, sleeves rolled, face smudged with grease. The morning rush had ended, and Nate wiped his hands on a rag, ready to head home. Michael approached, heart pounding in his chest like a call to action. I want to thank you, Michael began, voice earnest. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope, plain, unassuming. Nate blinked, curiosity furrowing his brow. Open it. Inside was a check, more money than Nate made in a month, earmarked simply for a job well done. Nate's eyes flicked up, disbelief mingling with gratitude. This you can't. Michael held up a hand. You earned it. You pushed me 2 miles, carried more than just my car. You carry me back to what matters. His voice wavered, emotion rippling beneath his calm. This is just the start. Nate closed the envelope slowly, fingers trembling. I don't know what to say. Then say nothing, Michael replied, smiling. Just promise me you'll keep being you. He paused. And if you ever need anything, training, support, a recommendation, call me. Nate looked at Michael's card and nodded, unable to speak. The mechanic's usual stoicism cracked, and for a heartbeat, Michael saw the man beneath the uniform, a son, a neighbor, a silent hero of his community. "Thank you," Nate finally whispered, voice thick. Michael extended his hand, and Nate clasped it firmly, a handshake that sealed more than gratitude. It was a pact to honor value beyond bottom lines, to champion people before profits. As Michael turned to leave, Nate called after him. "Hey, Michael." Michael paused. "You changed more than my bank account, boss. You changed my life." The words settled over Michael like dawn's first light, gentle, transformative. He walked away with a steady stride, carrying a revelation richer than any bonus. That true leadership is measured by the lives you uplift, not the numbers you command. And that surprise would ripple far beyond one mechanic's smile. By the afternoon's end, word of Nate's surprise spread like wildfire through the staff chat group. Whispers of, "Did you hear Michael did that?" and emojis flooded the feed. Servers exchanged knowing glances at pickup counters. Cooks paused mid-flip to smile at the news, and dishwashers chipped in with quiet cheers. The atmosphere shifted. An undercurrent of possibility pulsed beneath every task. In the break room, Carla cradled her coffee, eyes bright. "I can't believe he actually did it," she said to Marisol, who nodded, tracing patterns on her mug. "Makes you think he means what he said about all of us," Marisol replied. Carla tapped her badge thoughtfully. "Maybe I should pitch my training idea again." Across the kitchen, Luis wiped sweat from his brow and laughed when a line cook teased him about finally affording new boots. When Luis grinned in return, it was more than relief. It was validation. He'd been too ashamed to ask for support before. Now, he knew it wouldn't be dismissed. Upstairs in Michael's temporary open hours office, employees lined the hallway, hesitating before knocking. Each took a deep breath, clutching notes, suggestions for equipment upgrades, flexible scheduling requests, ideas for community outreach. The ripple from one act of generosity had coaxed courage out of quiet corners. Meanwhile, Nate found himself reluctant to leave the shop. Instead, he lingered by an old bulletin board where local job postings were pinned. With Michael's check burning a hole in his pocket, he peeled off the listing for advanced mechanic certifications, something he'd only dreamed of. Back at headquarters, Michael reviewed incoming messages. He saw enthusiasm, proposed solutions, and frank accounts of daily struggles. His inbox wasn't filled with corporate jargon. It was filled with human stories. He realized this was the momentum he'd been seeking, a culture empowered to speak, to act, to innovate. That evening, Michael walked the flagship location's quiet halls, imagining the energy of tomorrow's shifts. He pictured Carla leading a workshop, Nate returning with new tools, Marisol mentoring trainees, Luis outfitted head to toe in sturdy boots. He understood now that a single gesture, an envelope, an open door, could ripple through lives, transforming the whole. And as he flicked off the lights in the empty diner, he whispered to the silent booths, "This is just the beginning." He drove home under a canvas of stars, the quiet hum of the engine mirroring his racing thoughts. Streetlights blurred past, each one lighting fleeting reflections in his mind. Today had been a milestone. Emails sent, conversations held, surprises delivered. But as the city slipped behind him, he wondered if the glow of these actions would last. He parked outside his house, the lights in the windows a silent reminder of the life he'd set aside for business. Stepping onto the porch, he paused to inhale the night air, tasting its calm. His reflection in the glass door looked different, less polished, yet more authentic. The crisp suit had been replaced by a simple shirt and jeans. The stoic expression had softened into something more open. Inside, he wandered through empty rooms, memories echoing, late-night strategy sessions, closed-door negotiations, the hum of fluorescent office lights. He thought of how distant those moments seemed now, compared to today's raw conversations over coffee and grease. In his study, he found a framed photo, a younger version of himself shaking hands with the first diner's opening day ribbon, excitement shining in his eyes. He picked it up, tracing the edge of the frame. Back then, Success meant realizing a dream. Somewhere along the way, that dream had been eclipsed by spreadsheets and projections. Tonight, he reclaimed it. He placed the photo face down on his desk, a symbolic gesture of putting people before prestige. He opened his laptop and drafted a personal journal entry. Today, I remembered why I started. He typed slowly, words flowing without the usual filter, the pride in lifting a hood, the unity of shared effort, the humbled gratitude in Nate's eyes. He shut the laptop lid and stood, hands in his pockets. Change was seldom neat or immediate. It was a series of moments that built upon each other. He felt the weight of tomorrow's challenges, but also the thrill of possibility. On his way to bed, he paused by the window, overlooking the town. Lights twinkled like embers, each one representing a life touched by his decisions. He smiled, exhaustion mingling with hope. Reflecting on change wasn't an endpoint. It was the steady pulse that would guide him forward. And as he closed his eyes, he knew he'd carry that pulse into every morning yet to come. The next morning, Michael stepped into the flagship diner with purpose sharper than his dress shoes. He carried no briefcase, only a clipboard and an open mind. Carla greeted him with a tentative smile. He gestured her over. "Let's start with the booze," he said. Within minutes, he'd authorized repairs and ordered new seating to arrive that week. Her relief was immediate, a physical fix and a signal that her voice mattered. He moved to the kitchen, where Luis was prepping grills. Michael asked about ventilation issues. Luis guided him past puffing vents and pointed out rusted hoods. By day's end, Michael had approved an upgrade budget and scheduled installation overnight, minimizing disruption to service. Luis's grin widened until it threatened to split his soot-streaked face. Downstairs, Nate arrived with an armload of pamphlets, certification courses he'd researched. Michael signed off on tuition reimbursement and organized a mentorship pairing with a master mechanic at the corporate shop. Nate's gratitude came in a firm handshake that spoke volumes. Throughout the day, Michael held impromptu stand-ups, a lunchline huddle about staffing ratios, a quick powwow with dishwashers over ergonomic aprons, a brainstorming break with hosts about community events. Each conversation ended with concrete next steps, no vague promises. His clipboard filled with check marks and deadlines, milestones mapped out in real time. By evening, he hosted the first open-floor town hall. Employees filled every seat, leaning forward as he recapped the morning's actions. Then he opened the floor. Hands shot up. Proposals for volunteer partnerships, suggestions for profit-sharing models, requests for flexible schedules to accommodate school pickups. Michael listened, asked follow-up questions, and assigned champions for each project. When the hall cleared, he lingered to speak with the last employee, a shy barista who asked for eco-friendly cups. Michael promised to pilot a compostable line at this location, tracking results for a possible rollout system-wide. Locking up, he felt the hum of transformation in his bones. Change wasn't a memo or a mandate. It was a lived experience, built one decision at a time. The diner's neon sign buzzed outside, but inside, a brighter glow pulsed, the shared energy of real progress. And as Michael switched off the lights, he knew that today's actions would ripple into tomorrow's legacy. He slipped into his faded work shirt before dawn and joined the pre-shift huddle at the smallest location on the outskirts of town. No announcement, no fanfare, just a man blending into the lineup of servers, cooks, and dishwashers. The fluorescent kitchen lights glared overhead as he nodded at Rosa, the line cook battling a broken mixer, and to Jamal, the dishwasher whose back still ached. Rosa's hands moved deftly through batter, but her eyes widened when Michael stepped beside her. Instead of telling her how to fix it, he knelt and asked, "What do you need?" Rosa blinked, hesitated, then pointed to the frayed belt on the mixer. He jotted it down and promised a replacement before tomorrow's rush. Her relief softened the morning's chaos. He moved along the line, swapping places with Jamal to hand-dry a stack of plates. The soapy water lapped at his forearms, sending a jolt of reality through him. He felt the tension in Jamal's grip, the ache in his arms, and he paused mid-scrub. "How's the new schedule working?" he asked. Jamal shrugged, voice quiet. Helps with school pickup, but I'm still catching morning traffic. Michael noted it, vowing to adjust shifts further. Next, he joined Melissa at the register, headphones tucked behind her ears as she rang up orders. Instead of stepping around her, he rang a customer through, sliding the register drawer open to see how the mechanics felt. I've forgotten how precise this is, he admitted. Melissa grinned, a spark of camaraderie blooming. Every station he touched became a conversation starter. He learned about Carla's weekend class schedule, Nate's dream to open his own garage someday, Luis's daughter's soccer practice. He realized how little he'd known and how much trust he was building simply by being present. As the lunch rush crescendoed, Michael moved among them, not above, not directing, but alongside. Plates clattered, orders flew, and he felt the energy of a team recognized and respected. When the final customer left and the crew began post-shift cleanup, Michael stood at the center, heart full. Walking among them wasn't a gesture. It was a commitment to share their burdens and victories. And in that shared ground, he found the truest measure of leadership. The next morning, Michael arrived at the corporate offices and found the entire leadership team gathered in the conference room. Their faces were expectant, curious after the flurry of changes at the flagship location. As he entered, the usual tension of quarterly reviews was replaced by something electrified: anticipation. He didn't launch into metrics or projections. Instead, he shared a simple story: the 2-mile push, the conversations in grease-stained bays, the revelations forged in sweat. He watched as skepticism melted into engagement across the room. Then he laid out a single slide: people first. No bullet points, no profit forecasts, just those 2 words in bold. He explained how listening tours, surprise recognitions, and on-the-ground leadership had catalyzed a cultural shift. Employee morale was up, turnover down, customer satisfaction climbing. He didn't hide the costs. He embraced them as investments with measurable returns. One by one, department heads leaned forward. The training director proposed replicating the mentorship model for all frontline roles. HR suggested a centralized fund for emergency employee assistance. Operations unveiled plans to reallocate capital budgets toward equipment upgrades identified by teams on the floor. Michael paused as the CFO's eyes lit up. So, the ROI isn't just financial, she said. It's strategic stability, brand strength, and long-term growth. He nodded. Exactly. This is our new catalyst for sustainable success. Around the table, nods and murmurs confirmed the shift. Ideas sparked like flint. A mobile app for real-time feedback, cross-location job shadowing programs, profit-sharing pilots. The room buzzed with a synergy Michael hadn't felt in years. This wasn't about top-down mandates. It was about unleashing the collective intelligence and goodwill of every employee. He saw the leadership team transformed into co-creators, energized by the purpose behind each decision. As the session closed, the CEO stood and extended her hand. "Thank you for reminding us what truly moves the needle," she said, voice resonant. Michael felt a surge of pride, not for numbers, but for igniting a movement. Walking out, he knew this moment would be remembered as the true catalyst, the point where empathy intersected with strategy, sparking a company-wide revolution. And that revolution began not with a meeting, but with a push down a lonely road. The sun rose on a quieter morning, the usual hum of activity replaced by a gentle pause, anticipation for what came next. Michael walked into the flagship diner wearing a crisp polo, the new uniform he'd approved for himself. It felt symbolic, less executive, more team member. He paused at the entrance to let his eyes adjust to the soft glow of early light over clean countertops and polished booths. A small crowd of employees gathered near the bulletin board, chatting excitedly about upcoming town hall announcements. Their energy felt different, hopeful, invested, alive. Michael cleared his throat. Conversations hushed. He smiled, hands in pockets. "Today," he began, voice steady, "we turn intention into tradition." He unveiled the company's first People Promise Charter, a simple manifest: living wages, open-door leadership, ongoing training, and community support. Every item had been born from employee voices, and each would be honored in print, posted in every break room. A ripple of applause followed, genuine and warm. He handed copies to Carla and Nate, inviting them to share the reading. Carla's voice wavered with pride as she read the commitment to voice and respect. Nate's steady tone brought the pledge to recognize and reward real value, full circle. Then he unveiled a legacy project, the Carter's Community Fund, seeded with donations from corporate profits to assist employees facing hardships, medical bills, rent emergencies, educational pursuits. Murmurs of approval swelled into cheers. Marisol wiped tears, the promise of security softening years of worry. He concluded by asking for 2 volunteer representatives from each location to form the inaugural People Council, a group empowered to guide policy, ensuring that the charter lived beyond a signed document. Hands shot up immediately. Faces glowed with purpose. Afterward, Michael stepped back, letting the momentum carry the moment. Employees pored over charters, discussed fund allocations, and volunteered for the council. The diner floor buzzed, not just with orders, but with collective ownership. As he retreated to his makeshift office, a repurposed corner booth, Michael watched the transformation unfold. This was more than a policy rollout. It was a rebirth of company culture, rooted in the lessons of a roadside push and sustained by the voices often unheard. He opened his notebook and wrote at the top of a fresh page, "Every beginning is built on shared steps." And with that, he leaned back, ready for the journey ahead. A week later, the CEO of a key corporate account stormed into Michael's office, her heels clicking like a warning bell. She'd flown in unexpectedly, alarmed by rumors that the new People Promise Charter was diverting resources from agreed service standards. She demanded immediate assurances. No delays, no extra costs, no excuses. Michael rose to meet her in the front reception, all transparency and calm. He invited her to tour the floor, to see the changes firsthand. Reluctantly, she followed, first to the kitchen, where brand-new ventilation hummed. "Better air quality means faster turnaround," he explained. She raised an eyebrow, but nodded. Next, he introduced her to Jamal, who described how flexible scheduling allowed him to manage school pickups and still cover the busiest shifts. No more absentee gaps. The CEO's lips tightened. "Admirable," she said, "but can you guarantee no impact on deliverables?" Michael guided her past the shining booze Carla had refreshed and the efficient register system Nate had helped optimize. "Our service standards are improving because our people feel valued," he said. "Engaged teams make fewer mistakes and work faster. Turnover is down 25%, customer satisfaction up 18%. He handed her a tablet displaying real-time metrics. She scrolled. Orders served per hour, average ticket times, feedback scores, all trending upward since the changes. She paused at the bottom line. Profit margins holding steady, even improving due to lower recruitment and training costs. Her stance softened. "I came to protect my interests," she said quietly. "Now I see you've protected them, and more." Back in his office, she extended her hand. "Michael, consider this account renewed," she said, relief evident. As she left, Michael exhaled, sensing the gravity of the moment. The real test hadn't been about budgets or board approvals. It had been about proving that when you invest in people first, performance follows. And in that victory, he found the confidence to keep walking the path he'd set. The morning after the renewal, Michael stood at the entrance of the flagship diner and watched the sunrise paint the parking lot in soft gold. Yesterday's victory was sweet, but today demanded more, an ongoing commitment, not a one-time success. He inhaled the scent of brewing coffee and fresh pastries, ready to rise above complacency. He stepped inside and found Carla arranging fresh flowers on tables. Instead of a directive, he knelt to help. She laughed softly, surprised, and together they positioned each vase with care. His presence sent a ripple. Servers and hosts paused to smile, feeling seen. At the counter, he swapped shifts with Omar, the afternoon barista, taking orders and learning new drink recipes. Hands steady on the espresso lever, he realized how small acts built trust faster than any memo. In the kitchen, he joined Luis to tackle the afternoon rush. He worked the grill, flipping burgers and plating fries. Patrons applauded the change in routine, cheering as Michael navigated newfound tasks. He felt the rhythm of service, urgency, precision, and pride converging in every order. Between customers, he gathered feedback, loved the new seating, murmured a regular. "The team's energy is contagious," said another. Each comment reaffirmed his belief that when leaders immerse themselves, they elevate everyone. By evening, Michael convened a brief huddle. He thanked the team, not with jargon, but with genuine gratitude. "Yesterday tested us, and we rose together," he said, voice steady. "Today, let's push further, seek new ideas, new ways to surprise our guests and each other." He unveiled a simple challenge. Nominate one peer for a rising above recognition, someone who'd gone beyond. Nominations poured in. Marisol for mentoring new hires, Nate for weekend emergency repairs, Carla for her community outreach plan. Each nominee embodied the spirit of collective elevation. As he handed out certificates and small tokens at day's end, the diner buzzed with excitement. Walls that once separated roles dissolved into shared purpose. Michael realized true leadership thrived on continuous ascent, lifting others even when standing on solid ground. Walking home under a canvas of stars, he carried the warmth of a team united. He understood that rising above wasn't about reaching a peak. It was about helping every person around you climb higher together. And with that, he embraced the endless horizon ahead. He found himself in the back office late that night, seated at his childhood desk, once his father's workshop bench, now reclaimed as a quiet retreat. Under the harsh fluorescent lamp, he traced the grain of the wood where his initials were carved as a boy. Those etchings felt like a map back to who he'd once been, a dreamer who believed in community more than commerce. His reflection in the window showed a man both familiar and foreign. The tailored suits and polished shoes had given way to scuffed boots and faded jeans, but the transformation went deeper. Success had hardened him. Empathy had softened him. He realized his identity wasn't just Boss Carter, but Michael, a person whose worth came from connection, not conquest. He pulled out a dusty journal from the desk drawer, entries half filled with business metrics that now felt hollow. Turning the pages, he saw sketches of diner layouts, lists of flavors he dreamed of, musings on serving people with more than food. He had lost this in the climb. He opened a fresh page and began to write. "I am more than a leader. I am a listener, a learner, a lifter." The words flowed, each letter a stepping stone back to authenticity. He wrote of gratitude, for the mechanic who pushed him, for the staff who spoke their truths, for the customers whose smiles reminded him why he started. A soft knock on the door broke the moment. Carla stepped in, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "Thought you might need company," she said, offering one to him. He accepted, warmth spreading through his chest beyond the caffeine. They sat in comfortable silence, the hum of the diner settling into the night. Carla's presence felt like an affirmation. His reclaimed identity was not solitary, but woven with other stories. He smiled, lifting his mug. "To remembering who we are," he said. Carla echoed, clinking her mug against his. And in that simple gesture, Michael felt the final piece click into place. Reclaiming his identity meant embracing the shared journey, not just his own. And as the night deepened around them, he knew he'd never lose sight of that again. Sunlight streamed through the windows of the corporate boardroom as Michael stepped to the head of the table. The familiar faces of executives were there, once guarded, now engaged. He ran a hand through his hair, steadying himself for what he'd become, a leader shaped by empathy, not ego. He clicked on the first slide. 3 months in. Charts glowed in pastel tones. Employee turnover down by 40%, customer satisfaction up by 25%, community engagement events tripled. But he didn't dwell on numbers. Instead, he shared stories. Carla's mentorship program that cut training time in half. Nate's certification fellowship, now enabling him to train others in the month-long fundraiser that had helped dozens of employees facing emergencies. As he spoke, he saw nods of understanding. The finance director smiled, recalling cost savings from reduced rehiring.